We, the Security Council signatories of the Statement of Shared Commitments on the Principles of Women, Peace and Security, Albania, Brazil, Ecuador, France, Gabon, Japan, Malta, Switzerland, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, and the United States, have come together to express deepest concerns regarding the dire situation facing women and girls in Afghanistan. We condemn in the strongest terms the Taliban's systematic discrimination, segregation, and exclusion of women and girls in Afghanistan. The drastic restrictions on the exercise of their human rights and the impact it is having on their lives are unparalleled worldwide and may amount to gender persecution. We call on the international actors to take effective steps to end these abuses. Further, we reiterate our demand on the Taliban to swiftly reverse all policies and practices that restrict the enjoyment by women and girls of their human rights and fundamental freedoms, including those related to their access to education, employment, freedom of movement and expression, and women's full, equal, meaningful, and safe participation in public, political, economic, and social life. We also urge all states and organizations to use their influence, consistent with the purposes of the Charter of the United Nations, to promote an urgent reversal of these policies and practices, in line also with Resolution 2681. We recall Afghanistan's obligation to implement the provisions of instruments concerning human rights and fundamental freedoms, to which Afghanistan is a state party and by which it is bound, including the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. We also join calls for perpetrators of abuses against women and girls to be held accountable. We, the signatories of the Statement of Shared Commitment for the Principles of Women, Peace and Security, would like to use this opportunity to continue to create arenas for Afghan women to be heard. And in this context, would like to invite Karima Benoun to share with us her experience expectations for today's meeting. Karima, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Karima Benoun. I am an international legal expert and have worked with Afghan women human rights defenders for nearly 3 decades. My statement to the Security Council today will focus on what the international community should do in response to the catastrophic harm Afghan women are suffering under the Taliban. Since August 2021, the Taliban have relentlessly stripped Afghan women of most of their human rights and arbitrarily detained and tortured women activists who resist. For example, I am gravely concerned about the recent arrest of Nida Parwani and her family. And here, this is her photograph, and I call for her immediate release. This is not an abstraction. These are human lives. Many governments, UN officials, and experts, including the Secretary General himself, have labeled the situation gender apartheid. Along with many Afghan women advocates, I believe the gender apartheid approach offers one of the most promising ways forward. The Taliban are not simply failing to uphold women's rights. Oppression of women is central to their system of governance. Moreover, deeming the situation gender apartheid not only implicates the perpetrators of apartheid, but, as was the case with racial apartheid in South Africa, it means that no member state can be complicit in or normalize the Taliban's illegal actions. Hence, it makes clear that there can be no recognition of the Taliban and certainly no place for them at the UN, at least as long as their system of gender apartheid persists. Positive change will only be possible in Afghanistan with a principled international response led by the Security Council. So I will recommend to the Council and other relevant UN bodies that they recognize the treatment of Afghan women by the Taliban as gender apartheid and take effective steps to end these grave violations of international law. We need action, not more words. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Tell us if there is a status of the talks between the UN. Are there any updates of talks between the UN and the Taliban? And what is the message that the UN gives today when Afghanistan speaks in the General Assembly and it's not the Taliban? Thank you.
I'm afraid I'm not the right person to answer that question, but I'm sure someone will be.
What is the message that the Taliban gets when Afghanistan, not the Taliban, speaks in the General Assembly today? You talked about the fact that the UN should not recognize the Taliban.
I think it makes clear that there should be a special stigma for those practicing systematic discrimination as an institutionalized form of government that is counter to the UN Charter, and there's no place in the United Nations for an actor that represents those policies.
Thank you, Karima. We have a meeting to
You're
have.
suggesting a gender apartheid approach, but isn't the problem that there's really just one man that you have to convince? The Taliban say it's all up to their supreme leader. What do you say to Hibatullah?
Well, I think you have to say to the whole system that it is a system that is not acceptable in the 21st century. Thank you.